The city was alive with its usual rhythm, honking cars, chatter of office workers, and the distant rumble of a subway beneath the streets. People hurried in every direction, clutching coffees, briefcases, or phones. To most of them, it was just another morning. But for Elena, every day was a fight to survive. She walked slowly along the sidewalk, one hand gripping the tiny fingers of her 3-year-old daughter, Sophia, and the other carrying a faded backpack that sagged under the weight of all they owned for the day. Her shoes were scuffed, her jeans thin at the knees, and her face bore the tired look of someone far older than her 23 years. They were heading to the library again. For Elena, it wasn't about books anymore, it was about the free Wi-Fi. It was the only place she could apply for jobs, write emails, or escape the constant reminder of unpaid bills waiting in the tiny room she rented in a dilapidated boarding house. Inside her bag, carefully wrapped in paper, was a single sandwich. Peanut butter and jelly. It wasn't much, but it was all she could afford that morning. She had made it with the last slice of bread and scraped the jar clean with a spoon. As she walked, her stomach growled, but she ignored it. The sandwich wasn't really for her. It was for Sophia. By the time they reached the library steps, Elena was exhausted. She lowered herself onto a bench and opened her backpack. Sophia's eyes lit up at the sight of the sandwich. Elena smiled, breaking it in half, one piece for her daughter, one for herself. Just as they were about to take their first bites, a boy about Sophia's age ran past them. His dark hair bounced as he stumbled, nearly tripping on the curb. He wore a neat shirt and shoes that suggested he came from a family far better off than Elena's, but the hunger in his eyes was unmistakable. He stopped just a few steps away, glancing at the sandwich in Sophia's hands. For a second, his lips parted, but then he turned quickly, as if ashamed of his own longing. Elena's heart clenched. She knew that look too well. She had grown up in foster care, often watching other children eat lunches she couldn't afford, pretending she wasn't hungry. The pain of those memories flooded back as she watched the boy. Leaning down, she whispered to her daughter, "Sweetheart, would you mind if we shared our sandwich with him?" Sophia, young but already gentle in spirit, nodded without hesitation. "We can share, Mama." Elena called softly, "Hey there. Are you hungry?" The boy froze, then gave the smallest nod. Elena tore off the larger piece of sandwich and held it out. "Here, this is for you." The boy's eyes widened. "Really? Of course," she said warmly. "Eat, sweetheart." He took the sandwich carefully, as though it were a fragile gift, and whispered, "Thank you." Then he darted toward the corner of the block, where a tall man in a tailored suit stood talking on his phone. Elena didn't think much of it. She was just glad the boy wouldn't go hungry, even for a moment. She and Sophia split the smaller half and ate quietly. Her own stomach ached, but she pushed the pain aside. That was motherhood, choosing your child's needs over your own, again and again. What Elena didn't realize was that the tall man had seen the whole exchange. He had turned just in time to watch his son nibbling on a sandwich given freely by a stranger who, by all appearances, had almost nothing herself. The man was Daniel Hayes, CEO of Hayes Technologies, one of the largest and fastest growing companies in the city. A man used to power, privilege, and wealth. He had meetings lined up with investors, a driver waiting at the curb, and a world where problems were solved with money. And yet, as he watched Elena and Sophia eat their meager half of the sandwich, Daniel felt something stir inside him. A quiet discomfort, a question he couldn't shake. Why would someone with so little give so much? That evening, after putting his son, Ethan, to bed, Daniel asked gently, "Where did you get that sandwich earlier?" Ethan yawned. "The nice lady gave it to me. She said we should share. She had a little girl too. She gave it to you. She didn't sell it," Daniel pressed. "No, Daddy, she just smiled and gave it to me. Even though, she looked tired. Really tired." Daniel sat in silence for a long moment. He was a man who donated to charities, who attended galas to raise money for hospitals, but all of it had been distant, numbers, checks, tax write-offs. But this was human, raw, real. The next morning, instead of heading straight to the office, Daniel asked his driver to stop near the library. He stood on the opposite corner, scanning the benches, until he spotted her, the same young woman, typing on a cracked laptop while her daughter scribbled on paper with a broken crayon. Daniel approached. "Excuse me," he said politely. Elena looked up, startled. "Yes, I think, yesterday my son ate the sandwich you gave him." He smiled, a rare softness in his expression. "I just wanted to thank you." Alina's cheeks flushed. "Oh, it was nothing." He looked hungry. "I couldn't just ignore it." "It wasn't nothing," Daniel said firmly. "It meant a lot to him. And to me." He sat down, asking her name, her story. She answered cautiously at first, then more openly as she saw his sincerity. She told him about losing her parents, about foster care, about working part-time jobs and being left to raise Sophia alone. She spoke of applying endlessly for positions, only to be rejected because she lacked a degree or polished resume. Through it all, she never complained. She just explained, humbly, honestly. Daniel listened, struck by her resilience. When she spoke about her dream of one day finishing college so she could give Sophia a better future, his throat tightened. Here was someone who had every reason to give up, and yet she hadn't. Finally, he said, "Elena, I believe people like you are exactly what the world needs. Strong, compassionate, determined. Would you consider working for my company?" Her eyes widened. "Your company?" He handed her a sleek business card. "Daniel Hayes, CEO, Hayes Technologies." Elena stared at it in disbelief. "You're a CEO?" "Yes," he said gently. "And I'm serious. We have a role that would fit your skills perfectly. We also have a daycare program. You can bring Sophia." Her lips trembled. I don't know what to say." "Just say yes," he replied with a smile. The next day, dressed in her best thrift store blouse, Elena walked nervously into Hayes Technologies headquarters. The marble floors gleamed, the lobby buzzed with employees, and she felt utterly out of place. But Daniel had arranged everything. She was interviewed not just for her experience but for her character, her grit, her ability to handle challenges. She passed with flying colors. Within a week, she was hired as an administrative assistant. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady. The paycheck covered rent, food, and even allowed her to save a little. More importantly, Sophia was safe and happy in the company daycare, where she made friends and giggled freely for the first time in months. For Elena, it was life-changing. Each morning, she walked into the office with her head held a little higher. She worked hard, eager to prove herself. And Daniel, true to his word, mentored her, encouraging her to take evening courses, helping her build a path toward the career she had once only dreamed of. Months passed, and during a company event, Daniel stood before his employees. He told them a story, not about market shares or profits, but about a sandwich. About a young woman who had given her last meal to a stranger's child without hesitation. "This woman reminded me that kindness is the foundation of true success," he said, his gaze settling on Elena in the crowd. "She had nothing, yet gave everything. That kind of heart is priceless." The room erupted in applause. Elena's eyes filled with tears as Sophia clapped beside her, beaming. She hadn't just changed her own life. She had reminded a powerful man, and everyone who heard her story, that compassion could transform the world. And it had all begun with a simple sandwich, shared on a park bench by a poor girl with her baby, who never imagined that kindness would open the door to a future brighter than she had ever dared to dream. The morning rush was in full swing. Cars honked, buses groaned to a halt, and office workers hurried down the sidewalks clutching coffee cups. For most people, it was just another weekday. For Elena, 23 and already carrying the weight of the world, it was another test of survival. She held the small hand of her daughter, Sophia, as they walked toward the library. The little girl, barely 3, clutched a worn teddy bear under one arm, her curls bouncing as she tried to keep up. Elena's backpack, faded and fraying at the seams, held everything they had for the day: a bottle of water, a pack of crayons, and one sandwich. The sandwich wasn't much, just peanut butter and jelly on 2 mismatched slices of bread. But it was all they could afford. Life had turned hard after Elena's partner walked out before Sophia's first birthday. She juggled part-time jobs until one layoff led to another. Rent piled up. Eventually, she was forced into a small rented room in a crumbling boarding house. Every morning was the same: apply for jobs on her old laptop using the library's free Wi-Fi, pray for responses, and stretch what little food she could afford. On that particular morning, Elena and Sophia sat on the bench outside the library. She unwrapped the sandwich carefully. Sophia's eyes lit up, and Elena's heart squeezed. She broke it in half, one for her daughter, one for herself. Just as Sophia raised her piece, a boy about her age ran past. He stumbled near the curb, then paused, staring at the sandwich. His shirt was neat, his shoes polished, but his eyes, hungry and uncertain, lingered on the food. Elena noticed immediately. She knew the look of hunger, the way a child tried to hide it. She'd been that child once. She bent down to Sophia. "Sweetheart, would you mind if we share with him?" Sophia, with the innocence only children possess, nodded without hesitation. "We can share, Mama." Elena called gently, "Are you hungry, sweetie?" The boy froze, then nodded. Without thinking twice, Elena tore off the larger piece of the sandwich and held it out. "Here, take this." The boy's eyes widened. He accepted the food as if it were a gift of gold. "Thank you," he whispered, before running to the corner where a tall man in a suit was finishing a phone call. Elena smiled faintly, though her stomach clenched with emptiness. She and Sophia shared the smaller piece. It wasn't enough, but it would do. What she didn't realize was that the tall man had seen everything. He noticed how the young woman, poorly dressed, clearly exhausted, had given away the better half of the only food she had. The man was Daniel Hayes, CEO of Hayes Technologies, a multi-million-dollar company. He was used to a world of boardrooms and wealth, not kindness offered on an empty stomach. Yet that simple act stuck with him the rest of the day. Part 2, the CEO's response approximately equals 750 words. That evening, Daniel tucked his son, Ethan, into bed. The boy still had jelly on his cheek from the sandwich. "Buddy," Daniel asked softly, "where did you get that sandwich this morning?" Ethan smiled sleepily. "The nice lady gave it to me. She said we should share. She had a little girl too." Daniel blinked. "She gave it to you? She didn't sell it?" "No, she just gave it. She looked really tired, Daddy." But she smiled. Daniel sat in silence after his son drifted off. He donated to charities, attended fundraisers, wrote checks that reached 6 figures. But this woman, this stranger, had done more with one sandwich than he had done with all his wealth. The next morning, Daniel instructed his driver to stop near the library. He spotted Elena instantly, sitting on a bench with her daughter, typing on a battered laptop. He approached. "Excuse me, I think my son ate the sandwich you gave him yesterday." Elena looked up, startled. "Oh, it was nothing." He looked hungry. "It wasn't nothing," Daniel said firmly. "It meant a lot." They spoke. Elena, hesitant at first, opened up about her life, about juggling jobs, being left to raise Sophia alone, and her dream of finishing school so she could build a stable future. She never begged for help. She simply told her story, with honesty and quiet strength. Daniel was deeply moved. Here was a young woman with nothing, yet willing to give everything. "Elena," he said at last, "I think you deserve a chance. Would you consider working for my company?" She frowned in confusion. "Your company?" He handed her a business card. "Daniel Hayes, CEO, Hayes Technologies." Her eyes widened. "You're a CEO?" "Yes, and I'm serious. We have positions where your determination and resilience would be invaluable. We also have daycare. You can bring Sophia." Elena's voice shook. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Daniel replied with a smile. A week later, Elena walked nervously into Hayes Technologies for her interview, wearing her best thrift store blouse. The lobby's marble floors gleamed under bright lights. She felt out of place, but Daniel had already spoken to her. They looked beyond her lack of credentials, focusing instead on her character. She was hired as an administrative assistant. The pay wasn't lavish, but it was steady. It meant groceries, rent, and safety. More importantly, Sophia thrived in the company's daycare, laughing with friends, her belly full every day. Elena threw herself into her work. She was punctual, diligent, and quick to learn. Soon, she became an indispensable part of the team. And every evening, as she picked up Sophia from daycare, she whispered a silent thank you for the miracle that had come from a single sandwich. Months later, during a company-wide meeting, Daniel shared the story. "Success isn't just measured in profit," he told his employees. "It's measured in kindness." One young mother reminded me of that. "She had nothing, yet she gave freely to my son. That woman is now part of our Hayes family, and I couldn't be prouder." The room erupted in applause. Elena's eyes filled with tears as she held Sophia close. She hadn't just changed her life, she had reminded others that compassion has power. All it had taken was a sandwich, a mother's heart, and the courage to give even when she had almost nothing left.